My heart still clenches with raw anger when I think about last Saturday night. My boyfriend, Patrick, looked me dead in the eyes as he ground against a blonde girl, brazenly humiliating me in front of everyone. It was a calculated act of cruelty, and I was just beginning to scratch the surface of his true nature. Let me take you back a few steps because I know what you're thinking. Why were you even there? Patrick and I have been together for 9 months. And yeah, I know, that's not forever, but it felt real. Serious enough that after just 4 months, when his lease was up, we moved in together. I was so naive, so stupid, thinking it meant something. I'd moved here for college, built a life 2 hours from my parents, and he seemed like a stable part of it. He's 26, I'm 24, and he always flaunted his life experience, constantly reminding me how much more together he was than other guys our age. That was red flag number 1, blinking right in front of my face, and I chose to ignore it. So, last Saturday, Patrick announced we were going out to celebrate a big sale with his work friends. I should have known something was off. He spent forever getting ready, changing shirts 3 times, dousing himself in cologne. When I asked if my black dress looked okay, he just shrugged, fine. Patrick rarely complimented me unless he wanted something, and that pattern was already deeply ingrained. We arrived at the club, and his entire vibe shifted. He became this obnoxious king of the castle, buying rounds, making snide comments about other women being dressed like they're actually trying. Waitresses got his full charm offensive, but I might as well have been invisible. An hour in, I was talking to Cynthia, one of his colleagues, when it happened. Patrick walked up behind this blonde girl at the bar. She was stunning, in a tiny silver dress, and I'm not going to lie, she was gorgeous. But what came next was so unbelievably calculated, so profoundly cruel, I still struggle to grasp it. He started dancing with her. Okay, fine, we weren't glued at the hip. But then, he deliberately angled himself so I could see everything. Every single move was a performance for me. He kept glancing my way as his hands explored her waist, then drifted lower. She was grinding back, clearly enjoying the attention. The music was deafening, but not so loud that I couldn't hear him when he leaned into her ear, whispering something that made her throw her head back and laugh. Then, in slow motion, he locked eyes with me, and he mouthed the words, "This is what a real woman looks like." A physical blow couldn't have hurt more. I felt a cold dread wash over me, a searing shame. Cynthia saw it, too. She grabbed my arm, whispering, "We should get some air," but I couldn't move. I was frozen, watching my boyfriend of 9 months publicly, brutally disrespect me. And believe me, it only got worse. After what felt like an eternity, but was probably 10 agonizing minutes, the blonde's friends pulled her away. Patrick strolled back to our table, cool as a cucumber, as if nothing had happened. He ordered another drink. When I tried to pull him aside, to talk, to understand, he actually laughed, said I was being dramatic. I told him what he did was unacceptable, that I wanted to leave. His face twisted into a look of utter disdain. He said, and I quote, "Babe, you're too ugly to ever worry about me actually cheating. That was just dancing." The entire table went silent. Cynthia gasped. Even his friend Raymond muttered, "Dude, that's harsh." But Patrick just stood there, a smirk plastered on his face, like he'd just delivered a punchline. I was speechless, paralyzed by shock. Then the anger ignited. I demanded an apology, right then, or I was walking out. He took a long, slow sip of his beer, surveying the silent, staring faces around us. "You should thank me daily that I even touch you. Look around this place and tell me you're competing with any of these girls." That was it. I was done. I grabbed my purse, my vision blurring with tears, and started for the exit. But he caught me, grabbing my wrist. He said if I left, I was proving his point about being dramatic and insecure, that the girl from the bar was watching, and I was embarrassing him. Then, he did something truly unforgettable. He walked back to where the blonde girl was, brought her over to me, and introduced me as his girlfriend. He told her I was upset about their dancing. She looked completely mortified, saying she hadn't realized he had a girlfriend there. And then he told me to apologize to her for making things weird, for my insecurities. He stood there, waiting, and I, in that moment of utter brokenness, actually did it. I apologized. I told her it wasn't her fault, that I was sorry for the awkwardness. She was sweet about it, said she hoped we'd work things out, then vanished with her friends. Patrick, meanwhile, beamed as if he just single-handedly brokered world peace. He wrapped an arm around me. See, that wasn't so hard. Now, let's enjoy the rest of the night. But I was done pretending. I told him I was calling an Uber and going home. He shrugged it off. Fine, but you're overreacting, making our relationship weird over nothing. We'll talk when you calm down and can have an adult conversation. That 20-minute Uber ride home was a blur of tears, replaying every cruel moment. The planning, the positioning, the apology. It was all designed to break me. I waited on our couch until he stumbled in around 3 a.m., drunk and dismissive. He acted like I was insane for still being awake, insisting we'd talk in the morning when I wasn't emotional. Sunday morning, he was up, coffee in hand, acting as if nothing had happened. When I brought up Saturday, he sighed, as if I were bothering him with a trivial complaint. He offered a half-hearted apology for me getting upset, but immediately shifted the blame. I needed to understand the difference between dancing and cheating. If I couldn't handle him talking to other women, I wasn't mature enough for a real relationship. I corrected him. It wasn't about talking to women. It was about grinding on someone while calling me too ugly to cheat on. He rolled his eyes, claiming he was complimenting me, assuring me I had nothing to worry about. Most guys, he said, wouldn't be so honest about their girlfriends being safe from competition. I asked how too ugly was a compliment. He said I was twisting his words, that he chose me for my personality, not looks, and I should appreciate a boyfriend who values something real. He even suggested the blonde girl was probably boring. This man actually sat there, trying to convince me that publicly humiliating me was a sign of a good boyfriend. I told him that even if I believed his twisted logic, which I didn't for a second, making me apologize to that girl was unforgivable. He retorted that I made the situation uncomfortable, and my apology was the mature thing to do, proving I could take responsibility instead of playing the victim. He kept insisting I was making everything about me, when he was just trying to have fun with his friends. If I couldn't handle going out without getting jealous and possessive, maybe we should reconsider some things. Every time I cited a specific action or word, he'd claim I was remembering it wrong or being too sensitive. By the end of that torturous conversation, he'd somehow spun the entire narrative so I was the problem. He even offered to forgive me for embarrassing him at the club if I promised to work on my jealousy issues, suggesting I talk to someone about my insecurity. I just stayed at him, numb. He had spent 2 hours gaslighting me into believing I was the crazy one for being upset. I told him I needed space, that he should stay at his friend Luther's. He laughed, again calling me dramatic, but agreed to find somewhere else if I needed to cool off. He packed a bag, acting like he was doing me a massive favor, hoping I'd be rational when he returned. That was 4 days ago. 4 days of silence. No calls, no texts, nothing. I stewed, replaying everything, finding new layers of disgust. The way he made sure his work friends saw. The deliberate apology. The gaslighting. But what truly haunted me was wondering if his exes had suffered this, if this was just who Patrick was, or if something about me invited this treatment. Yesterday, I finally called my best friend, Haley. She was furious. Pack his stuff and leave it outside, she demanded. No decent man humiliates his girlfriend like that. Making you apologize? That's psychological abuse. I thought the club incident was bad, but I was about to discover the terrifying depths of the man I'd been living with. By the way, if you're still with me, make sure to hit subscribe. More unbelievable stories are coming. Patrick strolled back into our apartment like nothing had happened. Just walked in, bag in hand, putting clothes away, as if he'd been on a casual business trip, not disappeared for 4 days after publicly humiliating me. I was in the kitchen, making dinner, completely unprepared for the conversation we desperately needed to have. But seeing him just saunter in, so nonchalant, reignited the rage. I demanded to know where he'd been, why he hadn't called or texted. He looked at me, bewildered, as if I was being unreasonable. I told you I was at Luther's, giving you space to cool down. You needed time to think about your reaction, get your emotions under control. The way he said emotions made it sound like I'd had a mental breakdown, not a perfectly normal human reaction to being treated like garbage. I told him we needed to talk about Saturday night. 4 days of thinking had only made me more upset. He sighed, I hoped you gained some perspective, but fine, if you can be rational, I'm willing to discuss it. That word, rational, snapped something inside me. What exactly? I shot back. Was irrational about being hurt when your boyfriend grinds on another girl while telling you you're too ugly for him to cheat on. He instantly claimed I was starting off on the wrong foot, exaggerating, putting words in his mouth. We spiraled into a furious back and forth. Every specific detail I brought up, he had an explanation for, twisting it, denying it. The apology? You chose to apologize because you realized you were being unfair to her. The too ugly comment. You're twisting a compliment into an insult. But then, he said something that made the hair on my arms stand up. He claimed I had a pattern of getting upset over nothing, that I was insecure in our relationship. I asked what pattern, and he began listing examples. How I got weird when he talked about his attractive coworker, Molly, or made a big deal about his comments on some girl's Instagram, or got jealous about him having lunch with his female friend, Chelsea. The terrifying thing was, I barely remembered any of these minor incidents. But Patrick remembered every single one. He had been meticulously tracking my jealous behavior for months. It's concerning you can't see the pattern yourself. He lectured, maybe you need to work on your self-esteem issues. As he rattled off this insidious list, a chilling realization hit me. He had been testing me. All those little comments, all those mentions of attractive women, all those friendly outings. He was observing my reactions, then using them as proof that I was the problem. I told him it felt like he'd been deliberately trying to provoke jealousy, then criticizing me for feeling exactly what he wanted me to feel. He dismissed it as ridiculous, claiming he was just an outgoing person who got along well with women. If I had a problem with him having female friends or noticing attractive people, that was my issue. Not once did he acknowledge his actions at the club were wrong. Instead, he twisted the entire incident into an analysis of my character flaws, my jealousy damaging our relationship. By the end, he was suggesting I might benefit from talking to someone about my insecurity problems. He swore he loved me, wanted to make things work, but I needed to take responsibility for my part. He said relationships require trust, and if I couldn't trust him to interact with other women without getting possessive, we had bigger issues than one night at a club. I went to bed that night, my head spinning, utterly confused. He had this way of making everything sound so reasonable, but something felt profoundly, nauseatingly off. My mind kept returning to the club, the deliberate positioning, the blonde girl, the forced apology. It was all a meticulously planned assault on my self-worth. Wednesday morning, I woke up, still unsettled. Patrick was already making coffee, acting as if our conversation had resolved everything. He was affectionate, in a great mood, talking about weekend plans, completely erasing the tension. Then, as he showered, his phone, charging on the nightstand, buzzed relentlessly. Normally, I'd never touch it, but after everything, curiosity clawed at me. I picked it up. Instagram notifications, text messages. The phone was locked, but message previews flashed across the screen. Several from names I didn't recognize, some saying had fun last night, thanks for the drink. My stomach plunged. Then, a message preview from someone named Brianna. She has no idea she LOL. I stayed, utterly baffled. Who was Brianna? What did she has no idea mean? When Patrick emerged from the shower, I asked about the early texts. Just work stuff, social media, he shrugged. I pressed. I saw one from a Brianna. Is that someone I should know? His entire demeanor snapped. Defensive. Why are you looking at my phone? I explained it kept buzzing. I saw the previews. He claimed Brianna was just a college friend, the message an inside joke. But his tone, his eyes, screamed otherwise. He snatched his phone, unlocked it, turning away, frantically scrolling. When I asked what the joke was, he mumbled he couldn't remember. Not important. The rest of Wednesday was a tight, tense wire. He was glued to his phone, constantly angling it away from me. Every attempt to revisit Tuesday night or ask about the club was met with a subject change or dismissive. We've talked about it enough. By Wednesday evening, I felt like I was losing my mind. He was acting perfectly normal, while I was drowning in suspicions about his pattern tracking and this mysterious Brianna. I called Haley again, desperate to make sense of it. She listened, her anger building. "Is gaslighting you," she declared. "Tracking your reactions to test you? That's manipulative as hell. Normal boyfriends don't deliberately make their girlfriends jealous and then blame them for it." Then Haley said something that truly resonated. "Have you ever looked at his social media? What he posts about you or other women?" I realized I hadn't paid much attention. Instagram and Facebook weren't my world. Sometimes guys reveal their true attitudes about their girlfriends in what they post or comment on other people's posts, she advised. A cold knot formed in my stomach. Thursday morning, while Patrick was still asleep, I finally logged into his Instagram. I'd never scrolled through his feed before, but what I found made me physically ill. His profile was a shrine to his single life, littered with photos of attractive women, group shots where he was always strategically next to the prettiest, gym selfies flexing for the camera, shots from bars and clubs I didn't even know he'd attended. But his comments, my God, gorgeous as always. Fire emojis. Damn girl. He was a prolific commenter on his female friends' pictures, showering them with attention he never once gave me. I scrolled back months. Only a handful of photos featured me, and in most, I was barely visible or looked terrible compared to everyone else. Meanwhile, dozens of posts highlighted other women or presented him as completely available. It was crushing. He never once posted anything romantic or complimentary about me. His Instagram screamed single or casually dating at best. There was no trace of a serious, loving relationship. As I scrolled, a DM notification popped up. From Luther, Patrick's friend. The same Luther whose place Patrick had supposedly been staying. "Hey, can we talk? I think there's some stuff about Patrick you should know." My heart pounded. "Yes," I messaged back. "I want to talk." He suggested meeting in person. What he had to say was too important for text. We arranged to meet while Patrick was at the gym. I spent the morning a nervous wreck, terrified of what I might hear, yet relieved that finally some clarity might emerge about the twisted reality I was living in. The club incident, his social media, his behavior. I was starting to suspect it was just the tip of the iceberg. I knew I needed to hear the rest. Girls, I'm still shaking as I tell you this. That meeting with Luther, you are all right. Patrick is a complete psychopath, and it was so much worse than I could have ever imagined. I met Luther Thursday afternoon. I walked in, still holding onto a sliver of hope that maybe I was overreacting, that Luther would tell me Patrick was just misunderstood. But Luther looked genuinely stressed, uncomfortable. He asked if I wanted coffee, but I couldn't wait. I just sat down and asked him, "What's going on?" He started by saying he'd been agonizing over whether to tell me for weeks. But after the club, he couldn't stay silent. He felt responsible, he said, for enabling Patrick by not speaking up. Then, he delivered the first punch to my gut. Patrick had been planning the club incident for over a week. Planning it. He'd told Luther and other friends he wanted to put me in my place, that I was getting too comfortable and needed to be reminded where I stood. I asked what the hell that meant. Luther explained. Patrick had been complaining about me for months, saying I was getting too clingy and possessive, that I needed to be knocked down a few pegs. The club, the blonde girl. It wasn't spontaneous disrespect. It was a calculated, premeditated plan to publicly humiliate me. Patrick had picked that club specifically because he knew there'd be attractive women. He'd even scoped it out the weekend before to plan his performance. He wanted me to see him with someone who actually looked like girlfriend material so I'd understand the difference. I was reeling, trying to process this monstrous information, and Luther just kept going. Patrick had been talking about me to his friends for months, not with love or respect, but like I was a project, a temporary situation. He literally called me his practice girlfriend, saying I was good practice for when he found someone he actually wanted to be with long-term. He even rated me. Maybe a 6 on a good day, he told Luther. But dating her is helping me figure out what I really want. I felt physically ill. Then Luther dropped the next bomb. Patrick had group chats with his friends where they rated women. He'd sent photos of me, asking for ratings, then shared the results as proof he could do better. Luther pulled out his phone, saying he'd screenshot conversations because he knew I wouldn't believe it. He showed me a group chat called The Boys. A photo of me from my birthday dinner last month. Patrick's caption, "Rate my practice GF." His friends responded with numbers between 4 and 6. But Patrick's own reply? Exactly what I thought. She's a solid 3 on her best day. But she's easy to control and doesn't question anything I do. My eyes burned, reading those words. These grown men, rating me like an object. And my boyfriend, laughing along, adding his own cruel commentary about how controllable I was. Luther scrolled further, showing me how Patrick had shared deeply private details about our relationship, arguments, confidences, even intimate moments. Our entire relationship was just entertainment for him and his twisted friends. The absolute worst message, though, was from just a few days ago, after Patrick returned from Luther's. Mission accomplished, it read. Finally put her in her place. She's questioning everything now and walking on eggshells exactly where I need her to be. I looked up at Luther, tears streaming down my face, and asked if he'd been part of this. He swore he was just in the chat, never participated in the rating. He'd told Patrick it was messed up, but Patrick would just laugh it off, saying I'd never find out. He said what finally pushed him to tell me was a conversation Patrick had with someone else, revealing how truly deep the manipulation ran. Luther showed me screenshots of text between Patrick and a girl named Ann. From earlier this week, Patrick was bragging to and about how he'd broken me down at the club, how I was now completely under his control. He told him that making me apologize to that blonde girl was the best part of the night, proving I'd do anything to avoid losing him. He'd been testing my boundaries for months, establishing complete dominance. The messages were clinical, chillingly cold, like a business strategy. He wrote about deliberately making me jealous and insecure so I would be grateful for any attention he gave me. His plan was working perfectly because I was questioning my own reality and desperate to prove I wasn't the jealous, dramatic person he'd convinced me I was, and asked if he felt bad. Patrick's reply, "Why would I feel bad? She chose to stay. Every time I test her boundaries and she accepts it, that's on her. I'm just giving her what she's willing to take." I was sobbing, consumed by a pure, volcanic rage. Luther, looking distraught, handed me tissues, apologizing for waiting so long. He just hoped it wasn't too late. And then, he said, "There's more." Patrick had been seeing other women throughout our entire relationship. Not just flirting, but actively cheating with multiple people. The girl from a club? Not random. They'd been texting for weeks, had hooked up before. Patrick had a rotation of women, using our apartment when I was at work or visiting my parents. He'd even taken them to places we frequented, like our favorite restaurant, posting about it on social media, daring me to notice. Luther showed me Instagram messages, Patrick leading on women, pretending to be single or in a casual relationship that didn't mean much. Brianna, the one whose message I'd seen, a regular hookup. She has no idea message was about Patrick bringing another girl to a party they'd all attended while I was supposedly homesick with a headache. He was living 2 completely separate lives. The committed boyfriend to me, the single, available man to everyone else, constantly talking about ending things with his practice girlfriend as soon as he found someone worth actually dating. I asked Luther why. Why now? He said watching Patrick humiliate me at the club was the final straw. He was becoming more cruel, more calculated. Luther was genuinely worried. Patrick, he revealed, was planning to break up with me when his lease renewal came up in a few months. He'd been using me for cheap rent and domestic support while he shopped around for a real girlfriend. He'd even been taking bets with his friends on how long it would take him to completely destroy my self-esteem, bragging about how insecure he'd made me, how I'd beg him not to leave when he was ready to move on. After 2 hours of Luther detailing months of evidence that my entire relationship was a meticulously crafted lie, I felt completely numb. Every confusing moment, every argument, every doubt I'd had, it all clicked into horrifying place. The gaslighting, the tracking, the deliberate humiliation, all planned, all psychological warfare. Luther confessed his guilt for not speaking up sooner, saying he tried to distance himself, but Patrick just found other friends to share his depraved tactics with. I thanked him, shattered but clearer than I'd ever been. He gave me screenshots, warning me Patrick would try to gaslight me again. I drove home in a daze, my world shattered, rebuilt by rage. The man I lived with was a stranger, a predator who saw me as nothing more than a pawn in his cruel games. But amidst the devastation, a strange relief settled. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't overreacting. He had been deliberately manipulating me all along. I got back to the apartment, and there he was, Patrick, making dinner, acting like nothing had happened. He asked about my day, if I'd done anything interesting. I just stared at him, thinking about the other women he'd likely been texting all afternoon. I told him we needed a serious conversation. That condescending look immediately returned. He hoped I'd had time to think about our discussion and was ready to acknowledge my part. That was the moment I finally broke free. I know about your group chat, Patrick. I know you rated me, called me your practice girlfriend. I know about the women you've been cheating with. And I know the club incident was planned to humiliate me. His face drained of all color, then flushed crimson. For the first time, he looked truly scared, not smug. He stammered, demanding to know where I got the information, who I'd spoken to. I just said it didn't matter. I had proof. He immediately went into damage control, denying everything, claiming lies and jealousy, but the panic in his eyes was undeniable. This story, however, was far from over. And you won't believe how it truly ends. You guys, I still can't believe what unfolded over the last few days. Patrick has completely lost his mind, and honestly, I'm dying laughing at how utterly pathetic it's become. When I last left off, I had just confronted Patrick about the group chat and all the cheating I'd unearthed. His smug mask shattered, replaced by pure terror in a matter of seconds. And in that moment, I knew every single horrifying detail was true. He instantly spiraled, trying to convince me it was all lies, that someone was jealous of our relationship. He kept demanding to know who his source was. I calmly pulled out my phone and began reading his own words back to him. The solid 3 on her best day, but easy to control comment. The practice girlfriend messages, all the vile ratings and comments about my appearance. He tried denying it, then claiming I was taking it out of context before finally admitting they were real, but just trash talk with the guys. He was desperate to know who had access to his private messages. That's when I dropped the next bomb. I also know about Brianna, and the blonde girl from the club, and all the other women you've been hooking up with. He went completely pale, stammering about friends and innocent conversations. But then, I delivered the ultimate blow, and I know about your regular hookups with your boss's wife. Patrick's face turned paper white. He started stuttering, gasping for air as if he was having a stroke. I had screenshots, you see. Screenshots of Patrick bragging to his friends about this married woman, whose husband just happened to be the director at Patrick's company. Detailed messages about their affair, including photos and videos she had sent him, specific times and places they'd met. He had literally documented his entire affair with his boss's wife in excruciating, explicit detail. The moment I mentioned her name, he looked like he was going to pass out. All his attempts to figure out my source vanished. He started begging, pleading with me not to do anything with those screenshots, promising he'd do whatever I wanted if I just deleted everything and never spoke a word. I looked at this pathetic man, who had spent months making me feel worthless, and a wry smile touched my lips. Oh, now you're worried about consequences. Interesting how that works. He tried every trick, accusing me of violating his privacy, saying my source betrayed his trust, calling me dramatic, claiming all relationships have problems. But the moment I brought up his boss's wife again, all his bravado crumbled. I told Patrick he had exactly 1 hour to pack his stuff and get out of my apartment. The lease, you see, was in my name, his credit being not so great. And for the first time in our entire relationship, he didn't argue. He just nodded, frantically stuffing his clothes into a bag as if his life depended on it. As he packed, he kept asking what I was planning to do with the screenshots and begging me to tell him who had given them to me. I just smiled. Haven't decided yet, but they are definitely somewhere safe. He looked absolutely terrified. I need to know who's sharing my private messages so I can handle the situation, he pleaded. I just laughed. That ship sailed the moment you decided to document your affair in explicit detail. Before he left, he made one last desperate plea. He was sorry, he'd made terrible mistakes, but ruining his career wouldn't change anything. If I really loved him, I wouldn't destroy his life over some stupid messages. I laughed right in his face. Patrick, your life is already destroyed. You did that all by yourself. I'm not planning to ruin anything. Just keeping my options open, in case you decide to bother me again. He packed up and left that night, faster than I'd ever seen him move. No threats. No claims I'd come crawling back. Just pure, unadulterated panic about what I might do with the evidence of his affair. Friday morning, I woke up feeling utterly incredible. I changed the locks, began systematically purging his lingering presence from my home. But the best part, watching Patrick frantically try to win me back, without actually admitting the full scope of his depravity. He started sending desperate texts, made mistakes, we can work through anything, I'll delete all social media, cut off all friends, if I just promise silence. I ignored every single one. It apparently drove him insane. By Friday evening, he was texting constantly, a bizarre alternation between pathetic apologies and barely contained panic about his career. Saturday morning, he showed up at my building, buzzing my intercom relentlessly. When I finally answered, he was practically in tears, begging for just 5 minutes. He knew he'd messed up, but destroying his job wouldn't make me feel better. I told him, through the intercom, I'm not destroying anything, Patrick. I'm just existing with knowledge of your choices. If your choices might destroy your career, that sounds like a you problem, not a me problem. He grew more desperate. I'll do anything. Pay you money. Publicly apologize. I told him the only thing I wanted was for him to leave me alone and stop buzzing, or I'd call the police. Sunday morning, he started calling from different numbers since I'd blocked his main one. The voicemails were beyond pathetic. One message, he was literally crying, begging me to just tell him what I wanted. But the best one, he claimed he understood my anger, but revenge wouldn't make me happy in the long run. Destroying his career, he said, would make me just as bad as he'd been, and I was better than that. I actually called him back after that. When he answered, he sounded so hopeful, thinking I was finally giving in. I said, "Hey, Patrick, just wanted you to know I'm not getting revenge on you. I don't need to destroy your career. You already did that yourself when you decided to document your affair with your boss's wife in explicit detail and share it with your friends for entertainment. I'm just aware of your choices now." He started stammering, "It's not what it looks like," and begging me not to ruin his life over a mistake. I told him his life wasn't my responsibility. It was his. If he was worried about consequences, maybe he should have thought about that before creating a digital trail of his affair. I hung up before he could respond and blocked his new number. 2. Monday morning, I woke up to find he'd made 3 different fake Instagram accounts, sending completely unhinged messages, begging, asking what he could do to make it right. Honestly, you guys, I want to be crystal clear about something. I know some of you might be expecting me to expose this affair to her husband, and I get why that seems like justice. But I found out this woman has a 2-year-old child, and I'm not about to be responsible for potentially destroying some innocent child's family. That's between her, her husband, and her conscience. It's not my story to tell, and I won't be the one to blow up their marriage and affect their kid, just to get back at Patrick. What I am doing is letting Patrick drive himself absolutely insane, wondering what I might do with what I know. And honestly, watching him unravel, consumed by panic over his own choices, knowing that I hold all the power in this situation is infinitely more satisfying than any drama I could create. The funniest part, I haven't even done anything with those screenshots. I'm just existing, knowing what I know. And Patrick is creating his own personal hell, twisting himself into knots, terrified of my next move. He's completely lost control of the narrative he spent months crafting. It's been a week since I kicked Patrick out, and I feel like a completely different person. I'm sleeping soundly. I have energy again, and instead of walking on eggshells, I'm walking around knowing that karma caught up with him in the most poetic way possible. Haley came over yesterday, and I showed her some of his desperate messages. We were literally crying with laughter at how pathetic he's become. She said she'd never seen someone panic so hard about the consequences of their own actions. Patrick spent months making me question my reality, making me feel lucky that someone like him would even touch me. Now, he's begging that same person not to expose what kind of man he truly is. The tables have turned so hard, it's almost unbelievable. So tell me, after hearing all this, what would you have done in my place? Have you ever had someone try to gaslight you to this extent? Share your thoughts and stories in the comments below. I really want to know what you think.